Hello. I don't know if this message is fair or exaggerated, but I've spent a long time feeling invisible. From the first day, I felt that my partner's family never fully accepted me. They didn't insult me. They didn't openly reject me. They simply never chose me. There were always small comments, comparison, decisions made without me. And what hurt me the most wasn't that. It was that he never defended me. Every time I tried to talk about it, he told me I was exaggerating, that he didn't want problems, that that's how his family was. Today, I don't know if the problem was his family or that I was never his priority. I don't want to give my name. I only ask that if you share this story, you ask those listening to leave an anonymous name in the comment. I need to know if anyone else has gone through this. If this message hurt you a little, stay. Because today we are not talking about big sights. We are talking about constant micro pains. About when they don't attack you directly, but they don't distend you either. About when you are in a relationship, but you feel alone facing the other person's world.
She says that at the beginning she didn't give it much importance. She thought, it's normal. They just met me. With time it will settle. Not everyone shows affection the same way, and she decided to adapt. Because when you love someone, usually you are the one who tries harder. The small gestures that hurt, they weren't insults. They were things like family decisions without consulting her, uncomfortable jokes, comparisons with ex-partners, unsolicited opinions, nothing serious enough to complain about, but everything constant enough to hurt.
First reflection to the audience. Sometimes they don't hurt you with words. They hurt you with omissions.
The unilateral effort. She made an effort to be liked, to not inconvenience, to fit in. She changed her way of speaking, of dressing, of giving opinions. I felt like I was always taking an exam, and that is tiring. The partner as a bridge that never appeared. She expected something simple, not confrontations, not fights, just this, feeling backed up. But every time something made her uncomfortable, and she talked about it with him, the answer was similar. Don't exaggerate, that's how my family is. They don't mean anything bad. I don't want problems, and each one of those phrases left her lonelier.
Second reflection. When someone avoids conflict, they don't always choose peace. Sometimes they choose not to be inconvenienced.
Silence as a strategy. She started to stay silent, to smile, to let it go. Because every time she spoke, he got uncomfortable, and she didn't want to be the problem. The phrase that hurt her the most, one day, after a hurtful comment, she told him she had felt bad. He replied, "Don't take it personal." And that broke her a little, because it was personal. It was her life, her place.
KEB reflection. When someone tells you not to take it personal, often they are asking you not to take yourself seriously.
The loneliness inside the relationship. She started to notice something painful. She didn't feel alone with his family. She felt alone with him by her side. I didn't need him to choose me over his family. I needed him not to leave me alone in front of them.
Closing of part 1. She still didn't dare to name what she felt. But something was already clear. It wasn't just a family problem.
In the next part, we are going to enter into the most delicate part. When you start to doubt your worth, when love no longer feels like home.
The sensation of being a permanent guest. She says there was a moment when she understood it clearly.
It wasn't that his family hated her. It was something more subtle. I never stopped feeling like a guest. It didn't matter how many years passed. It didn't matter how hard she tried. She was always the girlfriend, the wife of, but never a real part. The language that excludes. They weren't direct insults. They were small phrases. Before we did this like this. In this family, it has always been this way. We are very close. Phrases that didn't include her. Phrases that drew an invisible line. First reflection to the audience. They don't have to kick you out for you to feel left out. Sometimes not making space for you is enough.
The silent comparisons. She started to notice something that hurt her deeply. Comparisons. Not always explicit.
Sometimes disguised as innocent comments. His ex was quieter. My son liked how she cooked better. Before he came around more often, every comment seemed small, but together, they weighed heavy. The pain of not being enough. She started asking herself things she didn't ask before. What am I missing? Why don't they like me? Why don't I fit in? And those questions aren't born alone. They are born when no one defends you.
Second reflection. When your partner keeps silent in front of others, that silence also communicates.
The attempt to talk about it again. She tried to talk to him again, not accusing, not demanding, just sharing how she felt. And again, the answer was similar. It's not a big deal. You are very sensitive. They don't do it with bad intentions. And unintentionally, he invalidated her experience. The hidden message. What she heard wasn't just words. It was this. Your discomfort is not a priority, and that hurts more than any external comment. The normalization of soft mistreatment over time, she started to normalize it. She thought, that's how families are. I have to adapt. I don't want to generate problems. And without realizing it, she started to shrink herself.
Third reflection to the audience. Adapting shouldn't imply disappearing.
The family events, birthdays, gatherings, celebrations. She attended, but she didn't enjoy. Always alert, measuring words, watching gestures. I went afraid of making a mistake. And living like that is tiring. The painful contrast. She saw how he was with his family. Relaxed, secure, protected. And then she saw herself, careful, tense, alone, and the difference hurt.
Key reflection. When your partner feels at home and you don't, something isn't balanced.
The moment she went completely silent, there was a comment that hurt her more than usual. She felt it in her body, but she didn't say anything, neither to them nor to him, because she already knew the answer, and that silence was an internal breaking point. The internal change. Something started to break. Not the relationship all at once, but her illusion. I started wondering if I was ever going to be enough, and that doubt stayed. Closing of part 2. She no longer doubted what she felt. She doubted her place. In the next part, we are going to enter the most painful point, when you start to feel like you are competing with your partner's family, when love becomes an unfair scale.
The sensation of competing for a place. She says she never wanted to compete.
She never wanted him to choose between his family and her. She never wanted to put him in an uncomfortable position. But even so, she ended up feeling like she was in a constant competition. I wasn't competing for love, I was competing for respect. And that hurts differently. The small decisions that said it all, they weren't big choices. They were everyday things. Plans canceled because of his family. Family opinions that weighed more than hers. Silences when someone made her uncomfortable. Changes in posture in front of others. Nothing dramatic, but repeated. And what is repeated becomes a message.
First reflection to the audience. They don't always say, I don't choose you. Sometimes they show you.
The usual argument. Every time she tried to talk about it, he said things like, it's my family. I can't change how they are. I don't want problems. And she understood him. But something didn't add up. Because understanding doesn't mean accepting coming in last. The internal conflict. She asked herself, am I being selfish? Am I asking for too much? But deep down, the only thing she asked for was simple, not to be left alone when something hurt her.
Second reflection. Choosing your partner doesn't mean rejecting your family. It means protecting the bond you chose to build.
The clearest moment. One day something happened that marked her. A comment, a joke, a lack of respect. She felt it clearly. She looked at him. She waited. Nothing. In that moment, I understood that silence is also an answer. The wound that opens. It wasn't immediate anger. It was sadness. The sadness of knowing that, when she needed it most, he wasn't there emotionally. And that changes the way you look at someone. Third reflection to the audience. When your partner doesn't defend you, you start defending yourself alone and then getting tired. The change in her. She started to withdraw, to not give opinions, to not tell, to not share, because she felt that nothing was going to change. I was turning myself off so as not to inconvenience. The emotional cost living like this has a price. Anxiety before family gatherings, sadness afterwards, constant doubts, and a question that wouldn't leave her in peace. What place do I have here?
A key reflection. Love shouldn't make you feel like you are in the way.
The hardest comparison. She compared herself to other couples. She saw men who defended, who set boundaries, who accompanied, and she asked herself, why not with me? And that question breaks you. The final attempt to explain herself. One night, she spoke to him calmly. She told him exactly this: I don't need you to choose between them and me. I need you not to leave me alone when something hurts me. He listened, he nodded, but he didn't change.
Fourth reflection. Listening without changing is also a form of not choosing.
The reality she started to see. She started to accept something painful. It wasn't that he didn't understand, it was that he didn't want to be inconvenienced. And that choice left her in the background.
She no longer asked herself if she was exaggerating. She asked herself if she could keep living without being chosen.
In the next part, we are going to reach the decisive point. When you realize that love shouldn't hurt like this, when you start thinking about yourself without guilt.
The day something changed inside, she says it wasn't a fight. It wasn't a harsh phrase.
It was a deep exhaustion. I realized I was fighting for a place that was never being offered to me, and that understanding was painful but clear. The most uncomfortable discovery. Until that moment, she had thought the problem was external, the family, the comparisons, the comments. But that night, she understood something harder to accept. She had also stayed in a place where they didn't defend her, not out of weakness, out of love.
Loving shouldn't imply begging for respect.
Looking at the relationship without excuses. For the first time, she stopped justifying. She stopped saying, that's how his family is. He isn't like that. He doesn't want problems. And she started seeing the facts. He didn't defend me. He didn't set boundaries. And that was also a decision. The silent grief, she cried. Not just for what she lived, but for what she had hoped for. The illusion of being apart. The illusion of building something together. That grief isn't seen from the outside, but it weighs heavy.
Second reflection. Sometimes you don't cry for what happened, but for what never happened.
The moment to say it out loud. One night, she spoke to him, not accusing, not screaming, with a calm that surprised even her. She told him, I don't feel part of your life when I am alone in front of your family. And she said it without fear. The response that confirmed everything, he replied something she had already heard before. I can't change my family, that's how they are. But this time, she heard something different, not an explanation, a resignation. Third reflection to the audience. When someone tells you that's how they are, sometimes they are also telling you that's how it will be. The boundary that started to form, she didn't demand immediate changes. She didn't ask him to choose. She only said something simple. I cannot keep living like this. And that boundary was internal first. Recovering her voice, she started doing small but important things. Stopped going to gatherings that hurt her, not smiling out of obligation, expressing discomfort without apologizing, choosing herself in silence, nothing radical, but authentic.
Fourth reflection. Setting boundaries is not pushing away. It is stopping losing yourself.
The change in her gaze. Something transformed. She no longer asked herself, "What did I do wrong?" She asked herself, "What do I need?" And that question changes the center. The fear of what was coming. She didn't know what was going to happen, if he would react, if something would change, if the relationship would resist. But she knew something with certainty. I couldn't keep being invisible.
Closing of part 4. She still hadn't made a definitive decision, but she had already taken the most important step.
Recognizing herself as someone who deserves a place. In the next and final part, we are going to close this story with the final choice, the message to the audience, and the truth that remains when you choose not to abandon yourself. When she stopped asking herself, "What if I exaggerate?" she says something changed definitely inside her. It wasn't anger, it wasn't resentment, it was clarity. I stopped asking myself if I was exaggerating and started asking myself why it hurt so much. And that question led her to an uncomfortable but honest truth. She wasn't too sensitive, she was too alone. The truth that hurts to accept. She understood something she had avoided for a long time.
It wasn't just his family, it was the lack of backing. It didn't hurt me that his family didn't choose me.
It hurt me that he didn't do it either. And saying that out loud was like taking a huge weight off her chest.
Key reflection. Loving someone shouldn't mean losing your place in the world.
The last attempt, without begging. She spoke one more time, not to convince, not to beg, to be honest. She told him, "I don't need you to choose between your family and me. I need to feel that, when something hurts me, I am not left alone." She said it calmly, with respect, with firmness. The final response. He listened, but he said the same thing as always again. "I don't want problems. That's how my family is." And in that moment, she understood something definitive. He had already chosen, only he hadn't chosen her.
Second reflection to the audience. Not all abandonments are physical. Some are emotional and occur in silence.
The hardest grief, she cried, not just for the relationship, but for the dream she had. The dream of building a home where she felt welcomed. That grief was profound, because you don't mourn what was, you mourn what will never be. The decision. She took a decision. Not impulsive, not dramatic. A mature decision. I am not going to stay where I have to fight for a place. And that marked a before and after. Choosing herself without hate. She didn't leave with rage. She left with sadness, but also with dignity, because she understood that you don't need them to accept you, to accept yourself. What she learned. With time, she could see everything with more clarity. She learned that love without backing wears out. Silence also hurts. Loyalty is demonstrated, not promised. And above all, she learned this. I deserve a place where I don't have to defend my existence. Direct message to the audience. Interaction.
This subscriber asked for something very simple, not to feel alone. So, if this story resembles yours,
leave an anonymous name in the comments, or share a similar experience, or write, "I also felt this way," because reading another woman, many times, is the first step to stop doubting.
Final message from the subscriber. She closed her message with these words, "I didn't hate his family. I didn't blame him with rage. I only understood that I cannot love in a place where I am not defended." Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for listening with an open heart. And remember this, you are not asking for too much. You are asking for the basics, and the basics should not be negotiated. If this story accompanied you, subscribe, share, and come back. Here we keep talking about what hurts, but also about what liberates.